I want you to see how people who had no money, no background, nothing, have been able to make their dreams a reality. And so whatever your dreams are, that can be real. And that's not positive thinking. I want you to know I'm not into positive thinking. You might think that if you've never met me, or you see a stadium and people are jumping and, clapping and all this stuff, dancing around. But there's a science to that. I'm not into positive thinking. I believe in intelligence. I believe in seeing things as they are, but not worse than it is. Do you ever notice how people tend to make it worse than it is? Why do you think that is? Tell me in the chat, why do you think people tend to make it worse than it is? I'd love to see what you have to say. Yeah, they're afraid. Yes, they're afraid of failing. That's all accurate. Good. So yeah, people are so afraid of failing that what they do is they make the situation worse than it is, and then you lose any sense that you can do anything about it. You lose your own agency, your own capacity to shift. And after you get used to it, it becomes a habit of your way of thinking. And so the bottom line is, I like to see it as it is. Call it straight. Let's be honest. I used to say I'm big bone. No, I was freaking fat. That's not fat shaming, because I want to be healthy. I want to be fit. But I had to tell myself the truth to change, right? And then you got to get uncomfortable. Everybody today doesn't want to be uncomfortable. No one wants their feelings hurt. But that's BS. Your feelings getting hurt. How many of you had your feelings get hurt and it drove you to become better in some way? Who can relate to this? Make some noise out there, right? So I'm not here to offend you or do something like that. That's not the kind of seminar that says, so don't worry about that. But it's just, I think I had to be honest with myself. I had to see it as it was, but not worse than it was. Because I'd say, I'm big boned. That was my excuse. Well, I have the same bones and I'm 38 pounds lighter, and that was 40 years ago, right? I've never gone back. But you got to see it as it is. And that's what we're going to do this week. Take a look at where you really are, and then where do you want to be, and what's the gap? And how would you close the gap from where you are and where you want to be quickly, right? The second step, if you're going to be successful at anything, kind of like a mandate of leadership, is see it as not worse than it is, but then you got to see it better than it is, because without a compelling future, people give up. These kids that are so depressed right now are these kids, I feel so, anytime I can talk to one of them, I do my best to get through to them, who don't want to have kids going forward because the whole world is going to disappear by, disasters in the environment in the next 12 years. It's total BS. But when you believe that, whatever you believe controls you. It controls how you feel, it controls what you do, it controls your results, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And so we all need a compelling future, something to deal with. If today is impossibly difficult, we can deal with the difficult today if we have a compelling tomorrow to go for that's real. But without a compelling future, we don't have anything. So you got to see it as is, not worse than it is, then see it better than it is. So you got to target, and then you got to make it that way. And for that, you need strategies, not just enthusiasm. But without energy, you won't do any of it. And that's what you see people jumping and moving, clapping, what we're doing. There's a science to it. And again, I'll explain more of it to you probably tomorrow, and when I'll explain to you what the Stanford study proved. But there's a biochemical change when you move and use your voice and you clap and you dance that shifts the way you are. At a basic level, you know the power of energy in your own life. If you're low energy, you're not going to get up and start a business. You're not going to be a great parent. If you're low energy, your relationship's not going to be great. So for me, early on, I'm looking around trying to say, what am I going to do to make my life better? I've got all these fathers, we don't have food, what am I going to do? And I wasn't popular in school. I loved people, but I remember the most popular kid in school treated me and my friends like dirt. I was like, how could this guy be popular? He's so mean, right? But it made me interested in psychology. And the other part was I had a mom who I honor to this day, most beautiful soul. I wouldn't be who I am without her. She's since passed. But she also went through some rough times and did what a lot of people did in her generation. She turned to alcohol and prescription drugs, Valium. And when you put those two together, she was a different personality. So she'd pour liquid soap down my throat until I was throwing up, saying I was lying, and I wasn't lying. And so when the person you love most seems like they're trying to hurt you, you got to figure your head out. But it made me a practical psychologist, because I have a younger brother, 5 years younger sister, 7 years younger, and I want to make sure nothing happened to them. So out of that hunger to find better answers, I started reading every book I could get my hands on. I took a speed reading course. I said, I'm going to read a book a day. I didn't do that, but I read about 700 books over 7 years. But also, I got exposed to a seminar. I didn't know what a seminar was. I'll tell you what happened. I was working as a janitor. I'm going to high school. I'm trying to help my family, working as a janitor on the weekends. And then I was working, as a busboy in this restaurant as well, just trying to contribute so we had enough money for things. And one day, my mom said, this guy, my dad talked about him also, and said he's become so successful and he buys houses and he fixes them up and sells them. And he was wondering if you wanted to, work this weekend. It pays really well and moving furniture. And I was like, of course. And my father said, yeah, that guy used to be such a loser. And now he's so successful. So I go there, I work my tail off. And I wasn't that big. I was 5'1" in high school. I'm 6'7" today. I tell people the difference is personal growth. But I had a tumor in my brain. It made me grow 10 inches. But before that happened, I'm a little guy, but I'm a hard worker. And I impressed him. And he's like, man, I'd hire you all the time. And you're amazing. And he goes, let's have lunch. And we started talking. And I said, well, I'd love to ask you a couple questions. I said, you're so successful now. You're doing all this stuff with real estate. And I said, my dad said you used to be such a loser, and now you're so successful. And only kids can say this. I literally said this to him. He said, your dad said what? Right? And I said, well, you know what I mean. And he goes, well, your he's being honest with you. I wasn't doing well. I'm doing great. And I said, well, what changed you? He said, I went to a seminar. I said, what's a seminar? He says, where this man takes his entire life experience and compresses what he's learned to save you time and teaches it to you in 3 or 4 hours or a couple days. And I said, wow. I said, you went to that seminar and it changed everything. It changed the way I thought, the way I felt, my actions. I learned tools. It changed everything. I said, well, I'd like to go to one of those. Could you get me in? He said, yes. But then there was no follow-up. I said, well, will you? And he said, no. And I said, no? Why not? He goes, because if you don't pay for it, you won't value it. And I said, I'll value it. Trust me. He goes, no, you got to pay for it. I said, well, how much is it? It was a 3-hour seminar, and it was $35. It'd be like $200 in today's dollars, to give you an idea, right? And I was working $40 a week as a janitor, so it'd be like a week's pay. That's a week's pay. He goes, well, then just keep doing what you're doing as a janitor and take 20 or 30 years and maybe you never get these lessons, or you could learn these lessons in a few hours and save yourself a decade. It's like, oh, it was one of the biggest decisions of my life at the time, spending $40, $35, because it was more than that. I had to pay for the gas, right? I'm thinking every dollar in those days. And so sure enough, I go to this seminar and I'm out of my mind, and I read so many books already. When Jim Rohn's speaking, I'm an audience of people, and I'm finishing some of the sentences because I read that book, Think and Grow Rich or whatever it was, right? And I was a little bit obnoxious without meaning to be. I was just so enthusiastic. And afterwards at the break, I went up to him and I let him know that I really wanted to come to work for him. And he looked at me as this kid and said, young man, he goes, you have to go through all my programs first. You got to do all these things. And I said, what are they? Well, my leadership, this and that. And I was like, how much is it? And in those days, it was $1,200. So it'd be like $10,000 today, give you an idea. And I was like, oh my God. I said, well, I'm sleeping in my car right now. My dad got kicked out by my mom. Christmas Eve, she chased me out with a knife. She wasn't going to kill me or hurt me, but I wasn't going back in. And I said, so I'm sleeping in my 1968 Volkswagen now. And I said, I don't really have any money. He goes, well, I'm not your banker. He said, some people have to survive. Some people have to succeed. If you have to succeed, you'll find a way. You've only got a week and a half. So I started going to banks trying to borrow money when I had no money and no credit. And I got really good at knowing when they're going to say no, like when I walked in the room. It's pretty obvious. And then I had this moment in my life that changed my life where I didn't know what it was. Something inside me just snapped because I was running out of time and I knew this was the answer. And I just got myself in this incredibly strong state. And I walked in. I didn't know what changing state was in those days. But I changed my body, went in. I looked at somebody who looked persuadable. And there was this sweet-looking woman with gray hair. And I walked straight up to her desk and I said, my name is Tony Robbins, and shook her hand, probably broke it. I was so enthusiastic. I said, I'm here to borrow $1,200, not so I can fix my car, go on a vacation, so I can attend a seminar. And she started to laugh, which was not a good sign, right? But long story short, she says, what are you doing? And so I said, I want to go to this seminar. I'm going to learn these skills of life and time management, this and that. And I said, I'm going to help hundreds of thousands of other people in my life. I wasn't thinking millions or $1.3 million in 1 week. But that was my view. And I went on and on and on. She looked at my application. She said, you're 17. I said, yeah. She goes, well, you have to be 18 to sign a contract in California. I said, well, I'll be 18 soon. She said, how soon? I said, how soon do I have to be 18? And then she looked one more and she goes, well, she looked at my address, and I put an address on Citrus Avenue. It's a giant avenue that goes through 4 cities that I used to live in there. And there are no real apartments. She goes, I didn't know there were apartments on Citrus Avenue. So I just told her the truth. I said, that's 7-Eleven and Denny's is next door. They're 24 hours. I park there at night and sleep. But the mailman, I made a deal with him and he'll let me pick up my mail there. And she goes, oh, we're going to loan you $1,200 and we can send your bill to 7-Eleven, right? But something in what I was doing, I got really emotional. I was like, I got to do this. I need your help. I'm going to make this happen. You can count on me. And there's this moment of grace where this lady looked at me and she goes, I think you're going to do something with that energy. I'd like it to be something good. She goes, but I don't see how the bank is going to loan you money. I said, please. I said, I will do whatever it takes. And she took a long pause and she said, I'll tell you what, I'm going to go to the bank and try and get loan you this money. But if they don't, I will loan it to you. But you have to look me in the eye and swear to me I'm never going to have to come looking for you. And I reached over and kissed her. I don't think she was quite ready for her. Her name was Mrs. Williams. I said, I'll always tell this story. I'll tell people I started all because of you.